I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. My name is Mike Sullivan, a 43-year-old construction site manager from Portland, Oregon. For 15 years, I built a life with my wife Amber that seemed picture perfect, at least from the outside. We had our modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb, weekend barbecues with neighbors, and camping trips along the Oregon coast whenever we could get away. Nothing extraordinary, just honest living. Amber worked as an administrative assistant at a logistics company downtown. She wasn't passionate about the job, but it paid well and offered stability. We met in our 20s at a friend's Super Bowl party. I spilled beer on her favorite jersey, and somehow she still agreed to a date. That's the kind of person she was: forgiving, easygoing, with a smile that could light up a room. We've been trying for kids for a few years without luck, and I won't lie, it put some strain on us. But we were working through it together. At least I thought we were. We'd started looking into adoption agencies, even set up a spare bedroom with neutral colors. Amber would sometimes sit in there alone, and I'd find her staring at the empty crib we'd purchased too early. My job kept me busy, often working 10-hour days and coming home exhausted. Amber would usually have dinner waiting, and we'd talk about our days before watching whatever show we were into at the time. Simple routines that built a life together. Her friends would tell me how lucky I was. Amber talks about you like you hung the moon, her best friend Taylor once told me. I believed it. Looking back, I can see the small changes that started about 8 months ago. Amber began working late more often. She bought new clothes, started wearing makeup differently. I actually liked the changes. Thought maybe she was finding herself, developing new interests. When I complimented her, she seemed pleased but distant, as if accepting praise from a friendly stranger rather than her husband. Just trying something new, she'd say with a shrug. The same old gets boring, you know. I didn't know. I was content with our life. But I wanted her to be happy, so I encouraged her. Maybe that was my first mistake. The day everything fell apart was painfully ordinary. A Tuesday in April, sunny but with that Pacific Northwest chill still in the air. I kissed Amber goodbye as she headed out in her sensible sedan, dressed in her typical work attire: black pants, blue blouse, hair pulled back in a ponytail. She seemed distracted but squeezed my hand before leaving. "Love you," I said. She paused at the door, looked back at me with an expression I couldn't read, and said, "You too, Mike." Then she was gone. I had no idea that would be the last time I'd see my wife as I knew her, or that by nightfall, my entire world would be upended in ways I could never have imagined. That evening, I called Amber around 6:30, our usual check-in time when one of us was running late. No answer. I texted, "Dinner plans?" Nothing. By 8 p.m., mild concern had evolved into genuine worry. This wasn't like her. Even on late nights, she always responded to texts. At 9:30, I called her workplace. The night security guard put me through to her department, but no one answered. Most offices cleared out by 6, he told me. Sorry, buddy. I called Taylor, who hadn't heard from her either. Maybe her phone died, she suggested, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. Amber was religious about keeping her phone charged, a habit from her college days when she'd once missed an emergency call about her father. By midnight, I was pacing our living room, calling hospitals and finally the police. The officer who took my report seemed unimpressed. Adults have the right to go where they want, he reminded me. Give it 24 hours, she'll probably turn up. But something felt terribly wrong. Amber and I had our issues, but disappearing without a word, that wasn't her. I drove to her office building, but the parking lot was nearly empty. No sign of her car. On a hunch, I pulled up our bank app on my phone. The last transaction was a $60 withdrawal from an ATM near her work at 2:15 p.m. during her lunch break. Nothing unusual there. I barely slept that night. By morning, I was calling her colleagues, compiling a list from our Christmas card addresses. Most seemed genuinely concerned, especially her cubicle mate Diane. She left early yesterday, around 2:30. Diane told me. Said she wasn't feeling well, but she seemed fine at lunch. Actually, she seemed excited about something. That detail nagged at me as I filed a formal missing person report. The detective assigned to the case, a woman named Ramirez with tired eyes but a sharp gaze, Asked if Amber had been acting differently lately. New clothes, new routines, staying late at work? She asked, jotting notes. Yes, but that's normal, right? People change, I said defensively. Detective Ramirez gave me a look I'd come to recognize, that blend of pity and professional distance. Sometimes, changes like that can indicate new influences in someone's life. I rejected the implication immediately. Amber wouldn't cheat. That's not who she is. Ramirez nodded non-committally and asked to see our home office. There, she requested access to our shared computer. I stood behind her as she clicked through our browser history, email accounts, anything that might offer clues. Amber had always been an open book. We knew each other's passwords, shared calendars, the works. But when Ramirez opened Amber's email, I felt the floor shift beneath me. There was a separate folder labeled routing docs that I'd never noticed. Inside were dozens of emails, all from the same address. BigRigRoland75@gmail.com. She works in logistics, I said weakly, even as Detective Ramirez opened the most recent message from 3 days earlier. Need to finalize our route. 2 days until freedom. Pack light, bring cash. Counting the minutes until you're mine. The words blurred as I tried to process them. Ramirez turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Mr. Sullivan, I think we need to consider the possibility that your wife left voluntarily. I shook my head, feeling physically ill. Number, there must be some explanation. She wouldn't just leave. But even as I protested, memories were realigning. The late nights, the new clothes, the distracted goodbye. My phone buzzed with a text from my bank. Unusual activity alert. $5,000 withdrawal from joint savings account at First National Bank, downtown branch. It was happening right now. Even as we searched for her, Amber was emptying our accounts. The next 48 hours passed in a surreal blur. Detective Ramirez acted quickly on the bank withdrawal, obtaining security footage that confirmed my worst fears. There was Amber, looking nothing like herself in dark sunglasses and a baseball cap I'd never seen, calmly withdrawing a significant chunk of our savings. Not a woman under duress, but someone executing a plan. We've identified the man waiting outside in the truck, Ramirez told me, showing me a grainy image of a tall, bearded man in a baseball cap. Roland Weaver, 38. Long-haul truck driver with transcontinental shipping. He's worked the Portland-Chicago route for the past 3 years. The same company Amber worked for, the pieces were fitting together in the most painful way possible. When Amber's car was found abandoned at a truck stop just outside the city, any lingering doubts evaporated. Surveillance footage showed her willingly climbing into the cab of Roland's 18-wheeler, carrying a single duffel bag. She never looked back, never showed a moment's hesitation. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This was calculated, planned for months. While I'd been picking out paint colors for our future child's room, she'd been planning her escape with another man. My phone began blowing up as word spread. Concerned friends, curious acquaintances, even my mother calling from Florida. I never trusted her, Mom said, which wasn't true and didn't help. The worst came 3 days after Amber's disappearance, when Taylor invited me for coffee to talk. Her expression was a mix of guilt and pity that told me everything before she spoke. I knew, she admitted, staring into her untouched latte. Not everything, but enough. She mentioned Roland a few times, said he was just a work friend. I suspected more but didn't want to believe it. Why didn't you tell me? My voice sounded hollow, unrecognizable. She said you two were growing apart, that you were married to your job, that you weren't the man she married anymore. Taylor couldn't meet my eyes. I told her to talk to you, consider counseling. I never thought she'd just leave like this. I walked out, ignoring Taylor calling after me. Back home, our house felt like a museum of lies. Photos of our vacations, our wedding day, Amber's birthday last year when I surprised her with tickets to see her favorite band. Had she been faking happiness all that time? Had anything been real? I found myself sitting in the empty nursery staring at the crib we'd never use. On the wall hung a hand-painted sign Amber had made. Every family has a story. Welcome to ours. The irony was too much. I tore it down, my hands shaking with rage and grief. That night, Amber's sister Jessica called. "Mike, I'm so sorry," she began, but I cut her off. "Did you know too? Was I the only one in the dark?" Her silence was damning. "Not specifics," she finally said, "but she told me at Christmas she was unhappy, that she felt trapped. I told her to get therapy, not to do anything stupid." "Well, she didn't listen," I said bitterly. "There's something else." Jessica hesitated. "Roland isn't just some random guy. They knew each other in college before you. They reconnected when he started working at her company last year. An old flame. A secret history. Another level of betrayal." The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I'd done maybe twice in the last decade. I couldn't face the sympathetic looks, the whispered conversations that would stop when I approached. Instead, I sat at our computer, obsessively reading through every email between Amber and Roland that I could access. Their plans were thorough. Roland's trucking route would take them through small towns, staying off major highways. They'd make their way to Arizona, where his cousin owned a small trucking company. New jobs, new identities, new life. My life savings funding their fresh start. A week after Amber vanished, something inside me shifted. The initial shock had hardened into a cold determination that surprised even me. If Amber and Roland thought they could simply walk away with my dignity and savings, they had critically underestimated me. I contacted our bank and learned that while Amber had withdrawn $5,000 in cash, she hadn't touched our investment accounts or retirement funds, which required both our signatures. Small consolation, but it meant she hadn't completely cleaned me out. I immediately froze all remaining joint accounts and transferred everything into new accounts solely in my name. "You should consider a credit freeze too," my bank manager advised. "In cases like these, sometimes the departing spouse opens new credit lines before leaving." Sure enough, a credit check revealed 2 new credit cards in both our names that I'd known nothing about, maxed out at $25,000 combined. The purchases traced a path from Oregon through Idaho and into Montana, hotel rooms, gas stations, restaurants. They were taking their time, enjoying their freedom on my dime. I contacted Detective Ramirez with this information. "Technically, since you're still married, it's not theft," she explained apologetically. "It's a civil matter at this point." "So she can just take everything and there's nothing I can do?" I asked incredulously. "I didn't say that," Ramirez replied, sliding a business card across her desk. "This is Marcus Hendricks, a friend of mine, private investigator, former fraud detective. He specializes in complicated domestic situations." It was the first glimmer of hope I'd felt in days. Marcus turned out to be a burly man with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense approach. "Credit card trails are like breadcrumbs," he explained during our first meeting. "Your wife might think she's being clever, but Roland's job creates patterns we can exploit. Truckers have predictable routes, weigh stations, required stops. Using the credit card information, truck routes, and Roland's company records that Marcus had acquired through sources he refused to name, we mapped out their likely trajectory. They were heading southwest, making stops that aligned with typical trucking routes, but spending more time at each location than necessary. Electronic breadcrumbs that formed a clear path. Meanwhile, I did my own digging into Roland Weaver. Social media revealed a man with a history of relationships with women from his delivery routes. There were angry posts from at least 2 other women, veiled references to him being a serial heartbreaker and using his routes to collect women. Amber wasn't his first married conquest, just his latest. The most valuable discovery came from a former colleague of Amber's who'd left the company months earlier. She forwarded me emails where Amber had been careless, mentioning Roland picking her up from work, having lunch together in his truck, evidence of their affair going back 8 months. "She told everyone you knew she was working late," her ex-colleague wrote. "We all thought it was some arrangement you two had. I'm so sorry, Mike." Then came the breakthrough. Roland's cousin's trucking company in Arizona, Desert Horizon Transport, had social media accounts showcasing their newest drivers. There was Roland, arm around a blonde woman whose face was partially turned away but unmistakably Amber. They'd already reached their destination. "We've got them," Marcus said when I forwarded him the picture. "Now we plan the next move carefully." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of control returning. Amber and Roland thought they'd executed the perfect escape, disappearing into the sunset with my money and my pride. They had no idea what was coming. If you're rooting for me to get justice against those who betrayed me, hit that subscribe button. The comeback is just beginning. Marcus advised me to take a two-pronged approach: legal groundwork and personal investigation. Build your case methodically, he said. Don't let emotions drive decisions. I contacted a divorce attorney specializing in cases involving financial infidelity. Jennifer Mills was a sharp-eyed woman with 20 years of experience and a reputation for being relentless. She didn't sugarcoat the situation. In the eyes of the law, marital assets divided during divorce don't always account for betrayal, she explained. But unauthorized credit cards, identity theft, and fraud, those are different matters entirely. Working with Jennifer, we documented every unauthorized transaction, every deception. The credit cards Amber had opened without my knowledge constituted identity fraud since she'd forged my signature on the applications. The $5,000 withdrawal, while from a joint account, could be addressed in divorce proceedings. We're building a paper trail, Jennifer assured me. Every receipt, every email, every bank statement tells part of your story. Meanwhile, Marcus continued tracking Roland and Amber's movements. Desert Horizon Transport had hired them both, Roland as a driver and Amber in the office. They were using their real names, apparently confident they were beyond my reach. People like this get comfortable quickly, Marcus observed. They think crossing state lines means they're untouchable. I took 2 weeks off work, calling it a family emergency, which wasn't far from the truth. My boss, who'd heard rumors, was surprisingly supportive. Take the time you need, Mike. Your job will be waiting. During this period, I focused on rebuilding myself. I joined a gym, channeling my anger into physical exhaustion. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, surprised by how many rallied around me. My brother flew in from Chicago, spending 3 days helping me reorganize the house, removing traces of Amber. You're better than this situation, he told me over beers. Don't let it define you. The nursery was the hardest room to address. After much deliberation, I donated the crib and baby supplies to a local women's shelter. Something good should come from all this. I also discovered something unexpected while organizing our home office. A hidden folder on our shared laptop containing copies of our tax returns, birth certificates, and financial statements, all documents Amber would need to establish herself elsewhere. She'd been planning this for months, methodically gathering what she'd need while sleeping beside me each night. The most crucial development came 3 weeks after Amber's disappearance. Roland's ex-wife contacted me through social media after hearing about our situation through mutual connections. Roland did the same thing to me 5 years ago, Cynthia explained during our phone call. Left me for a woman from his route, cleaned out our accounts. 6 months later, he was back, begging forgiveness, claiming the other woman was crazy and had trapped him. Did you take him back? I asked. Unfortunately, yes, she sighed. That's why I'm calling you. Roland has a pattern. He's charming, makes women feel special, but he's always looking for the next opportunity. Your wife isn't special to him, she's just the current one. Cynthia provided dates, details, even names of other women Roland had pursued. Most importantly, she sent screenshots of messages from when he tried reconnecting with her just 3 months ago while clearly already involved with Amber. He keeps backups, Cynthia explained, always has an escape plan. This information was gold for both my attorney and Marcus. We now had evidence of Roland's predatory pattern, something that could potentially help in both legal proceedings and in understanding what might happen next. People follow patterns, Marcus said when I shared Cynthia's information. If Roland's history holds true, your wife is in for a rude awakening and that might be our opportunity. For the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. A plan taking shape in my mind. The path to recovery wasn't just about healing my wounds, it was about ensuring justice. As summer transitioned to fall, I underwent a transformation that went beyond the physical changes from my gym routine. The man I was becoming bore little resemblance to the trusting, somewhat naive husband Amber had left behind. I immersed myself in understanding financial and legal systems that had never interested me before. Jennifer, my attorney, seemed impressed by my quick grasp of divorce law and financial disclosure requirements. Most clients let me handle everything, she remarked. You're different. I need to understand the weapons being used against me, I replied. surprising myself with the metaphor. Meanwhile, Marcus provided regular updates on Amber and Roland. They'd settled into a rental house in Tucson, both working at Desert Horizon Transport. Social media showed them at local restaurants, hiking in the desert, playing the part of the happy couple. Amber had dyed her hair darker, perhaps thinking this minor change would make her harder to recognize. "They're getting comfortable," Marcus noted. "That's when people make mistakes." The first mistake came when Roland updated his LinkedIn profile, listing his new position as route manager at Desert Horizon. This confirmed his employment and gave us a direct business connection we could leverage. The second mistake was financial. Amber attempted to access our joint investment account online, triggering an alert. The IP address traced back to their Tucson rental. She was still hunting for assets. I began systematically rebuilding my life. I redecorated my house, painting over the sage green Amber had insisted on with colors I preferred. I took cooking classes, something I'd always wanted to try but Amber had dismissed as not your thing. I reconnected with college friends she'd never warmed to. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been submerged in our marriage. Not all changes were easy or pleasant. I had to confront uncomfortable truths about how I'd ignored warning signs, how I sometimes prioritized work over our relationship. Not that this justified Amber's betrayal, but understanding my role in our failing marriage was crucial to avoiding similar mistakes in the future. The most significant transformation occurred when I visited Amber's parents in Seattle. I'd avoided contacting them initially, unsure if they'd been complicit in their daughter's plan. The tension was palpable as Ellen and Robert welcomed me into their home. "We had no idea," Ellen said, eyes brimming with tears. "She told us last month that you two were having problems, but nothing about this." Robert, more stoic but clearly disturbed, added, "We raised her better than this, Mike. Whatever issues you two had, this isn't how adults handle them." They showed me recent texts from Amber, vague messages about starting fresh and following her heart, but nothing specific about her location or circumstances. She'd lied to them too, claiming we discussed separation. "Has she asked for money?" I inquired, following Marcus's suggestion to probe for financial connections. Ellen and Robert exchanged glances. "She mentioned having unexpected expenses," Robert admitted, "asked if she could borrow against her inheritance from my mother." "And did you send anything?" "We were going to," Ellen said, "but after your call, we've put it on hold." This was crucial information. If Amber and Roland were seeking additional funds, their situation might not be as stable as their social media portrayed. According to Cynthia, Roland typically burned through money quickly, spending on luxuries to impress his current partner. Before leaving, I shared some of what I'd learned about Roland's history with other women. Ellen wept while Robert's expression hardened. "We're behind you, Mike," he said firmly. "Whatever you need." Their support was unexpected and touching. I realized I hadn't lost my entire family when Amber left some bonds remained intact, even strengthened by the crisis. Back home, I received an email from Jennifer with documents ready for my review divorce papers, citing abandonment, financial fraud, and identity theft. Seeing it laid out formally, the story of my marriage's end in clinical legal language should have been devastating. Instead, I felt a curious sense of empowerment. The paperwork represented not just an ending, but the beginning of justice. Amber had underestimated me, thinking I'd collapse in her absence. Instead, I was emerging stronger, more resolved, and with a clear plan. "You ready for the next phase?" Marcus asked when I called to update him. "More than ready," I replied. "Let's move." By late October, all pieces were in place for what Marcus called the confrontation. Our intelligence suggested that Roland and Amber's relationship was showing cracks. Their social media posts had become less frequent, and Roland's pattern of eventually growing restless seemed to be holding true. According to his employment records, he'd recently requested long-haul routes again, the first sign of him preparing another escape. "He's setting up his exit," Marcus confirmed. "Your wife doesn't realize it yet, but she's about to become another Cynthia." Jennifer had prepared comprehensive legal documentation, including evidence of the fraudulent credit cards and unauthorized access attempts to our accounts. The police in Tucson had been notified about the identity theft charges, though they considered it low priority given the marital connection. "We need something more compelling to get immediate action," Jennifer advised. "Right now, they see this as a messy divorce, not criminal activity." That something more arrived unexpectedly. Amber's sister, Jessica, called me, sounding distressed. Mike, I need to tell you something, she began hesitantly. Amber contacted me yesterday. She sounded different, said things weren't working out as planned with Roland. She asked if she could stay with me for a while if needed. What did you tell her? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. I told her she made her bed. Jessica's voice hardened. But there's more. She mentioned money problems. Said Roland had borrowed most of what they had for some investment opportunity that didn't pan out. This aligned perfectly with what Cynthia had told me about Roland's financial habits. I thanked Jessica and immediately called Marcus to share this development. Perfect timing, he said. I've been monitoring their finances through sources I can't disclose. There was a large withdrawal from their joint account last week, nearly all they had left. If Roland's following his usual pattern, he's preparing to disappear with whatever remains of your money. We decided to act immediately. Marcus flew to Tucson while I followed the next day with Jennifer. The plan was simple but effective. Confront them with both legal and personal consequences simultaneously, while Roland was still there. Upon arriving in Tucson, I checked into a hotel near their rental house. Marcus had been conducting surveillance, confirming both still lived there, though Roland had been absent several nights. He returned this morning, Marcus reported. They had a loud argument about money. Neighbors heard it. Jennifer arranged for a process server to deliver the divorce papers, which included the identity theft, charges, and financial evidence. Meanwhile, local police were notified of potential domestic disturbance at the address, creating an official record. The confrontation itself was both more dramatic and more satisfying than I'd anticipated. I waited in Marcus's surveillance vehicle while the process server approached their door. Through binoculars, I watched Amber's face transform from confusion to shock as she accepted the thick envelope. Within minutes, Roland emerged, gesticulating wildly. Even from a distance, his anger was evident. Amber followed him onto the driveway, clutching the papers, her face pale. That's when we made our move. Marcus and I approached from opposite directions, effectively cutting off Roland's retreat to his truck. Jennifer emerged from her car parked down the street, adding to the sense of coordinated confrontation. Amber froze when she saw me, her expression shifting rapidly between fear, shame, and defiance. Mike, she gasped. What are you doing here? Delivering consequences, I replied calmly. For both of you. Roland attempted his charm offense, speaking with forced casualness. Look, man, relationships end. It's not personal. I cut him off. The relationship ending isn't why I'm here. The identity theft, credit card fraud, and stolen funds are why I'm here. I turned to Amber. Did you know he's been moving money again, planning his next escape? The confusion on her face confirmed she didn't. Tell her about Cynthia, I suggested to Roland, and Amanda before her, and Bridget before Amanda. Your pattern's pretty consistent. Roland's expression darkened. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I countered, nodding to Jennifer, who produced a folder containing statements from Roland's previous partners, including recent messages showing he'd been reaching out to another woman in California. Amber snatched the folder, flipping through pages with increasing agitation. What is this, Roland? His silence was damning. The police have been notified about the identity theft charges, Jennifer stated professionally, and Mr. Sullivan's statement regarding the fraudulent credit card applications has been filed. As if on cue, a police cruiser turned onto the street knot part of our plan, but perfect timing nonetheless. 2 officers approached, responding to the reported domestic disturbance call. Their arrival transformed the confrontation from personal to official. While the officers took statements, I watched Amber's world collapse around her. Everything she thought she'd gained freedom, love, a fresh start was evaporating. Roland was already distancing himself, speaking separately to one officer, his body language showing no concern for Amber. Was it worth it? I asked her quietly, when we had a moment alone, throwing away 15 years for this? She had no answer, just tears streaming down her face as she finally confronted the consequences of her choices. The aftermath of the Tucson confrontation unfolded rapidly. Roland, true to his pattern, attempted to flee that same night, but was detained by police for questioning regarding the identity theft charges. They couldn't hold him long, but it was enough to disrupt his escape plan and give Amber a harsh reality check about the man she'd chosen. The practical resolution began with financial matters. Jennifer, armed with comprehensive documentation, filed emergency motions to address the fraudulent credit cards and unauthorized withdrawals. The credit card companies, presented with evidence of forgery, agreed to investigate the charges as fraud rather than marital disputes. This is unusual in marital cases, Jennifer explained, but the paper trail is so clear, and with Roland's history of similar behavior, they're treating it differently. The divorce proceedings move forward with unexpected efficiency. Amber, now represented by a hastily hired local attorney, offered little resistance to the terms. The settlement we reached was straightforward. I retained the house and my retirement accounts. Amber would be responsible for the fraudulent credit card debt, and she would make monthly restitution payments for her share of the withdrawn savings. She knows she has no leverage, Jennifer observed, and with potential criminal charges hanging over her head, she's motivated to settle. Indeed, the threat of criminal prosecution loomed large. The district attorney's office in Portland reviewed the identity theft evidence and agreed the case merited pursuit, regardless of marital status. They offered Amber a deal: make full financial restitution, complete community service, and serve probation instead of jail time. Criminal charges weren't my primary goal, I told Marcus as we flew back to Portland, but there need to be consequences beyond just divorce. There already are, he replied. Look what she's lost: her reputation, her family's trust, and apparently Roland too. He was right. According to Jessica, who'd reluctantly agreed to let Amber stay with her temporarily, Roland had completely disappeared after being released by the Tucson police. He'd emptied what remained in their joint account of final betrayal that left Amber truly destitute. He played her exactly as he's done with others, Marcus said. She was just another mark in his con. Back home, I focused on finalizing the divorce and rebuilding my life. The house that had once felt haunted by Amber's absence now felt like truly mine. I replaced furniture, rearranged rooms, and finally converted the nursery into a home office space for my future, rather than a memorial to what might have been. The most unexpected resolution came through a letter Amber sent via her sister. I initially considered throwing it away unread, but curiosity prevailed. Mike, she wrote in her familiar handwriting, I won't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable on every level. I convinced myself that my unhappiness was your fault, that Roland represented the excitement and passion missing from our lives. I was wrong. He was a predator, and I was willing prey. She went on to explain how she'd realized too late that the stability and trust I'd provided were far more valuable than the fleeting excitement Roland had offered. By the time I understood what I'd thrown away, it was already broken beyond repair, she wrote. The letter concluded with a simple acknowledgement. You deserve better than what I became. I hope someday you find someone worthy of the good man you are. I didn't respond. The letter wasn't really for me, it was part of her own healing process, her attempt to make sense of her catastrophic choices. My healing didn't depend on her apologies or regrets. When the divorce was finalized in December, I felt no triumph or vindication, just a quiet relief. The legal documents officially ended our marriage, but emotionally, it had ended months earlier in that moment of discovery in our home office. During our final meeting, Jennifer asked if I felt I'd gotten justice. Justice isn't about making the other person suffer. I reflected, it's about restoring balance. Financially, legally, and emotionally, I've reclaimed what's mine. That's enough. She smiled, clearly approving of my perspective. Most clients want revenge. You wanted resolution. That's why you'll be okay. She was right. As winter settled over Portland, bringing clean, cold clarity, I found myself standing on solid ground again. The betrayal no longer defined me. It was simply something that had happened, a painful chapter in a book with many more pages yet to be written. 2 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, I stood in my kitchen brewing coffee and reviewing plans for a new construction project. My company had promoted me to project director 6 months earlier, overseeing residential developments across the Pacific Northwest. The increased responsibility came with better pay and more flexible hours to balance I'd once thought impossible. My home had transformed along with my life. Gone were the beige walls and generic furniture Amber had preferred. Now, exposed brick and reclaimed wood reflected my personal taste. The painful renovations of that first year purging reminders of my former life had, giving way to creative changes that made the space truly mine. The nursery-turned-office had become command central for a side business I started, a consulting service helping people recover from financial betrayal. It began informally, with friends of friends seeking advice after hearing my story. Now, I had a website, a small client list, and the satisfaction of turning my experience into something that helped others. You have a gift for explaining complex financial and legal concepts in accessible ways, my newest client had told me the previous week. You make people feel less alone in the mess. My friendship with Marcus had evolved into a professional partnership. He referred clients to me for the financial recovery aspect, while I sent people his way when they needed investigation services. We'd even collaborated on a presentation for a local community college about identity theft protection. Jennifer, my attorney, had become another valued connection. She occasionally consulted me on cases involving financial deception, appreciating my firsthand perspective. You see patterns others miss, she noted. You know the red flags because you lived them. My personal life had healed in unexpected ways too. I joined a hiking group, rediscovering my love for Oregon's natural beauty. Through that group, I had met Laura, a wildlife biologist with a quick wit and thoughtful nature. Our relationship had developed slowly over 8 months, both of us carrying baggage from past betrayals, both cautious but increasingly hopeful. The difference, Laura had observed on our recent weekend trip to the coast, is that we're not trying to fill holes in ourselves with each other. We're already whole, just choosing to share our lives. As for Amber, I heard updates occasionally through mutual connections. She'd moved to Minnesota, living near an aunt and working in retail management. According to Jessica, who maintained limited contact, Amber had completed therapy and her probation requirements, and was slowly rebuilding relationships with family members. She never contacted me directly again after that one letter, respecting the boundaries the divorce had established. Roland had eventually surfaced in Texas, already involved with another woman, already following his familiar pattern. Cynthia kept me updated, part of her own healing process. Each time he does this to someone new, I remind myself how close I came to letting him back into my life. She said, "Your situation helped me see the bullet I dodged." One unexpected postscript came through social media. Taylor, Amber's friend who had known about the affair, reached out with a coffee invitation. Initially hesitant, I agreed to meet, curious about her perspective after 2 years. "I've carried such guilt," she confessed across the table. "I should have told you what I suspected. You were caught between loyalties," I acknowledged. "And who knows if I would have believed you then." "How are you really doing?" she asked, studying my face for signs of lingering pain. The question made me reflect. The betrayal had changed me fundamentally, but not in the ways I might have predicted. I was more discerning, but not cynical, more self-reliant, but not isolated. I learned to trust again cautiously, wisely starting with trusting myself. "I'm good," I answered truthfully. "Better than I would have been if none of this had happened." She looked surprised. "Really?" "The marriage was failing anyway," I explained. "This forced me to rebuild from the foundation up, not just patch the cracks." As I drove home from that meeting, I realized how true those words were. The betrayal that had once seemed like the end of everything had ultimately revealed strengths I never knew I possessed. The path had been painful, but it had led to a life more authentic and fulfilling than the one I'd lost. That evening, walking through my transformed home, I felt genuine gratitude for the journey, not for the betrayal itself, but for who I had become because of it. The wounds had healed, leaving scars that marked not just damage, but survival, growth, and unexpected new beginnings. Looking back on the most difficult chapter of my life, I'm struck by how differently things turned out than I could have imagined during those dark days when Amber first disappeared. The man who stood frozen in Detective Ramirez's office, staring at emails from Big Rig Roland, barely resembles the person I am today. If there's wisdom I've gained from this experience, it's that betrayal reveals truth, painful truth, yes, but valuable nonetheless. It shows you who people really are, including yourself. Amber's betrayal revealed her character, Roland's predatory nature, and most surprisingly, my own resilience. I've come to understand that surviving betrayal isn't just about enduring pain or seeking justice, though both are part of the process. It's about reclaiming your narrative, refusing to let someone else's choices define your story. For months after Amber left, I saw myself as the guy whose wife ran off with a truck driver. Now I see that as just one chapter in a much longer, richer story that continues to unfold. The financial recovery was, in many ways, the easiest part. Money can be reclaimed, assets divided, debts reassigned. The emotional recovery took longer and required more intentional work. I had to confront difficult questions. Why didn't I see the signs? What role did I play in our marriage's breakdown? How could I trust again without becoming paranoid or bitter? Through therapy, supportive friends, and honest self-reflection, I found answers that helped me move forward rather than remain stuck in anger or self-doubt. I learned to separate Amber's choices from my worth as a person. Her betrayal reflected her character, not mine. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome has been my ability to help others navigate similar situations. The consulting business grew from my refusal to let the experience be merely personal. By sharing what I learned about financial protection, legal recourse, emotional recovery, I've helped dozens of people find their own paths to resolution and renewal. Laura and I continue to build our relationship carefully, mindfully. We've discussed marriage, but aren't rushing toward it. We're enjoying the journey, she says, and she's right. There's value in the present that I failed to appreciate before, too focused on future plans and expectations. As for Amber, I've reached a place of genuine indifference. I no longer wish her ill, nor do I particularly hope for her happiness. Her life proceeds separately from mine, as it should. The emotional ties that once bound us love, then pain, then anger have dissolved, leaving neither attachment nor animosity. Last month, I finally sold our wedding rings. The jeweler offered less than I'd hoped, but the symbolic act of converting those circles of false promises into funds for my next hiking trip with Laura felt appropriately transformative. The past became fuel for the future. If my story resonates with you, perhaps you're navigating your own journey through betrayal or its aftermath. Remember that while you didn't choose the betrayal, you can choose your response to it. You can emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentic not despite the pain, but because you refuse to let it define you. Thank you for staying with my story till the end. It means the world to share this journey with listeners who understand both the darkness of betrayal and the possibility of renewal that lies beyond it. If you found value in hearing about my experience, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need to hear that survival and thriving are possible, even after the most devastating betrayals. In the comments, I'd love to hear which part of this journey resonated with you most. Was it the initial discovery, the confrontation in Tucson, or perhaps the rebuilding process? Your insights might help others facing similar challenges. And if you have suggestions for future stories you'd like to hear, whether about relationship betrayals, workplace injustice, family conflicts, or systemic issues, please share those too. This community grows stronger with every shared experience and perspective. Remember, betrayal may be part of your story, but it doesn't have to be the end of it. The most powerful chapters often come after the most painful ones when you reclaim your narrative and write your own path forward. Until next time, this is Mike Sullivan, reminding you that while we can't always choose what happens to us, we always have a choice about what happens next.